It's that time of year where everyone gathers together in an oppressive hall to show their working. No, it's not exam time, it's watches and wonders. Let's take a look at all the big headlines from all the big brands, be they good, bad, or Hublot. I am truly humbled and blessed to be reporting these new watches to you, as you can tell by my sweater, and you can be humbled and blessed too by picking one up from the link below. Thank you. We start our Watches and Wonders roundup with a game of Tudor Spot the Difference, by which I don't mean trying to find out if Henry's got a new wife. First up is the Black Bay 58 Burgundy, which at first glance looks like just a new sunburst dial and bezel combo in deep blood red, but actually gets the addition of the rubber strap and an updated movement as well. The reference number for the caliber has been changed from MT5402 to MT5400-U, with COSC certification being dropped for METAS. That's not the only thing that has dropped, however, with power reserve sinking from approximately 70 hours to just 65. That was an easy one. The next one is a little harder. It's the Black Bay Pro, now with a silvery Opaline dial and black ringed markers. Does it also have an updated caliber, perhaps even to the Black Bay 58 GMTs to make it a little slimmer? It makes do with exactly the same COSC certified caliber, so it's still almost 15mm thick. The Black Bay 68 really feels like a red herring in our Spot the Difference game, but it's been thrown in at 43mm to cater to what Tudor believes is a growing demand for larger case sizes. We've seen Tudor trialling new ideas for Rolex before, so if this does well, prepare for bigger Rolex watches in the future. Now we're warmed up, we're moving on to more challenging territory. Can you tell me what's new with the Pelagos Ultra? Aside from the model name in what I assume is flamingo blue, it's pushing up dimensions to 43mm across and 14.5mm thick to withstand up to 1000 meters of depth. Still thinner than the Black Bay Pro. And lastly, for the bonus point round that nobody's actually expected to get, we have an updated Black Bay Chrono in both black and silver. What's the difference? To quote the immortal words of Homer Simpson when questioned about his masquerading of Mr. Burns, "I don't know." The Tudor press release describes it as having been further refined. I thought Tudor was owned by Rolex, not Lumen. Last year, with the reveal of its new branding and a subsequent collection of land, sea and air inspired models, Bremont got quite a bit of stick. Well, the stick, branch and the whole goddamn orchard. Many felt that this wild departure from what had come before would have been better placed as a return to what had worked well in the past, namely the Martin Baker MB series of watches. And this year, with humble gratitude, that's what Bremont have brought. Under the Altitude collection, as part of the land, sea, air business, is a new collection of aviation creations that are direct descendants of the MB design language. Central to the collection is the MB Meteor, named after the aircraft Martin Baker famously developed their ejector seat in, which is down in diameter 1 mil from 43 to 42. Oh yeah, if you're not aware, the premise of the Bremont MB series is to survive the dismantling forces of an aircraft cockpit over a lifetime of 30 years, including the life-saving incidents of an ejection. The shock-absorbing triptych case was vital to the success of the original Bremont MB project, and it's part of the design language that's filtered through into the additional 39mm date and 42mm chronograph GMT that have joined the MB Meteor. All three watches have a refreshed dial design in line with Bremont's rebrand, with additional aviation-themed elements creeping in, like the warning trim on the date window and a strict no-beard policy. Both time-only watches are La Joux-Perret powered, with the chronograph GMT getting a Celita, and all three water-resistant to 100 meters. Build quality gets the Boeing seal of approval. There's been some body dysmorphia going on at Bulgari this year since Piaget swooped in and snatched the crown for the world's thinnest tourbillon at Watches and Wonders 2024. If you didn't know, Bulgari has an Ariana Grande level of obsession with being thin, conquering every complication and even the thinnest watch ever in the quest for ultimate slenderness. At just 1.85mm thick, this Octo Finissimo Ultra Tourbillon brings the story back full circle to the beginning of Bulgari's fat phobia, 2014's Octo Finissimo Tourbillon, which weighed in at a disgusting 5mm thick. Bulgari's taken some pretty drastic measures to push the pound since, including the separation of the winding and setting functions into two discrete crowns, flat against the back, although it's not quite as extreme as the 1.75mm record-holding Finissimo Ultra Cosc. Because the tourbillon requires the balance to sit inside a cage, there's still enough height in the watch to stack both the hour and minute hand on top of each other. Or perhaps it's to leave some gas in the tank just in case Piaget tries to snatch back the crown, giving Bulgari wiggle room to bitch slap them back to the quartz crisis. For now, we bask in this incredibly petty achievement, shaving tenths of a millimeter from the previous record in what is perhaps the most competitive segment of watchmaking today. That the Octo Finissimo Ultra Tourbillon is thinner in its entirety than the original 2014 Finissimo Tourbillon's caliber is really rather remarkable. Next, it'll lose its septum. 2 whole years ago, FP Journe teased us with an integrated sports watch called the Chronometre Furtif Bleu, with furtif meaning stealth. Not only was it decked out in a dark tantalum case and bracelet to make it stealthier than a B2 with a false mustache, it was also hidden in plain sight by the virtue of numbering just one piece, sold at the only watch auction. Francois Paul may be the industry's beloved grumpus, but even he's not that mean to keep this slick new line sport watch from the general public forever, and now for 2025, the Furtif has become a permanent addition to the collection, only this time with a twist. Where the last Furtif was in tantalum, a dense metal almost as heavy as gold, this new one's decked out in tungsten carbide, which is equally as dense and typically used for drill bits designed to chew through steel. So in a game of watch conkers between you and the owner of a steel watch, you're sure to come out on top. Contrasting tantalum accents adorn the 42mm case, polished where the tungsten carbide is presented in a plain matte finish, not unlike the radar-reflecting surface of our mustachioed military missile launcher. Open the Bombay doors to reveal that this isn't a time-only watch after all, the rose gold caliber 1522 revealing a moon phase display and power reserve nestled in amongst its bridges. At 85,000 Swiss francs, it might just be cheaper to buy the bomber. The big news from the Far East this year isn't the addition of 900 new vaguely different dials inspired by Mother Nature's defecation, although if that's what you wanted you won't be disappointed. Rather that the collective manifestation of the entire watch community for the last 10 years has finally come into being. Yes, Grand Seiko have finally released an on-the-fly micro-adjust clasp. But before you get too carried away, Grand Seiko are stretching the definition of micro for their micro adjust with just 3 positions of adjustability. So more or less like the old spring bar positions, but now without the need of a straightened paperclip. Also, it only appears to be available on one watch for now, the titanium edition of the ultrafine accuracy spring drive duo. These 37mm watches in platinum or titanium get the new, smaller caliber 9RB2, with accuracy up from plus or minus 10 seconds a month to plus or minus 20 seconds per year. For the first time in a spring drive caliber, a regulating switch has been added for fine-tuning during a service. I'm sure that has absolutely nothing to do with the recent accuracy challenges faced by the mechanical 9S-A5. Such accuracies are made possible by aging the quartz crystal for 3 months. I'm guessing dry-aged in whiskey barrels for those oaky notes, and sealing it inside a vacuum chamber to stop physics having its wicked way with its timekeeping abilities. This new clasp and caliber combo comes courtesy of a fresh, scenic outlook, the frost-tipped trees of the Shinshu forest, into which that watchmaker ran into once and was never seen again. The colour of the angular pattern matches the sparkling frost for the titanium edition and gets an icy blue hue for the platinum, which was inspired by the product catalogue in the Shinshu Rolex dealership. If there's someone who can bring a bit of bright sunshine into our lives, it's the ever-cheery Richard Bentz of Studio Underdog, who's teamed up with bespoke watchmakers Sartre Billard for a summer display that's going to get people buzzing. Based on Sartre Billard's SB05, the Sunflower Edition packs in a 2-tone double ring of guilloche to bring the warm glow of the hearty sunflower onto the wrists of just 10 owners. The concentric guilloche patterns radiate from the middle out, a deep purple brown to represent the seeds, and a bright golden tone for the plant's petals. Extra engraving features on the outer ring to delineate each individual petal, whilst a little peak of green can be found at the base of the hands to evoke the big flower's stem. The 38.5mm stainless steel case gets a La Joux-Perret hand-wound caliber finish to Sartre-Billard specs in the back, with a power reserve of a chunky 90 hours, approximately twice as long as the average British summer. Richard might not be able to make the sun shine in good old Blighty, but he can certainly bring a warm reception everywhere he goes. It's a big year for IWC. Star ambassador Lewis Hamilton has jumped ship to Ferrari and with it Richard Mille, so instead the Schaffhausen-based brand has turned its attention to the fictional F1 outfit Apex GP for the upcoming Formula 1 movie. Brought to you by the dude behind the recent Top Gun sequel, it promises several hours of top quality racing cinematics, IMAX smashes, and dialogue so wooden and thin Lewis will get disqualified again. There's 4 pilot watches in Apex GP's black and gold livery, including a digital Perpetual calendar, plus a big pilot shock absorber XPL now in tourbillon form as well. This one may be a bit too delicate for a Toto Wolff edition, but I guess we'll see who wins out with the last one, it or Toto's desk. Also making an appearance for this year is a whole raft of new Ingenieur editions. IWC keen to capitalise on the rising interest for integrated watches about 5 years ago. They must have been looking over the Ferrari strategist's shoulder again. There's a full black ceramic edition in 42mm, a Perpetual calendar in 41 for all the John Mayers we have at home, a 40mm green and gold dial edition as worn by Brad Pitt in the F1 movie, a 40mm solid gold version for those who like making questionable financial decisions, and a whole suite of 35mm Ingenieurs to round out the selection. I'll be honest, I was browsing through the Mont Blanc press release this year, fully expecting it to be as exciting as a bumper edition of Songs of Praise, but 2 things caught my eye bobbing in a flat sea of beige. One is the 1858 Geosphere annual calendar, which not only jams in an annual calendar whose months are indicated via an outer red arrow, but a world-timed globe at 6 o'clock as well. It's a delightful aperitif for sure, but where the coke and hookers come into play is around the back, because this watch gets a stonking hand-finished Minerva caliber to keep all those dials in sync. With 336 parts lovingly caressed into life by the Minerva watchmakers. The 42mm 1858 Geosphere annual calendar will be available to 100 people in steel and 30 in lime gold, which is presumably an alloy of gold and Gatorade. But where the press release took a turn for the unexpected is with the 1858 Geosphere Zero Oxygen Mount Vinson limited edition. It's a celebration of some bloke climbing a bunch of mountains or something, but what caught my eye was the case material. A blend of quartz fibres, aluminized basalt, calcium carbonate, a light blue resin, and just a pinch of salt to taste. The net result is a glacial display of layers and colour, with the only inaccuracy being that it hasn't disappeared completely. A huge horological thank you goes to my fantastical Patreons for holding my hand through all life's challenges. If you want to join me in Council 2, the link's in the description below. Thank you. If you've ever looked at Kudoke's K2 and wish the entire dial could be absorbed by that hand-engraved day-night indicator, then your very specific prayers have been answered with the brand new Kudoke K5. This time the entire watch becomes a 24-hour display, with the bipolar disc in the middle acting as the dial's hand. It's such a beautiful creation that it should keep you distracted long enough not to notice that reading the minutes on this is probably as hard as the hand engraving itself, since the single indicator's nearest demarcated reference is split into 15-minute segments. The disc itself is actually something more of a dome, bulging proud of the watch under the layer of protective sapphire in a most three-dimensional way. It may not tell the time so good, but it sure is pretty to look at, the two halves plated in contrasting tones to highlight the difference between a beautiful moonlit night ruined by Starlink satellites and Sauron's butthole. Since it is indeed hand-engraved, every single piece will be slightly different, that is to say, unique, and I'm sure if you asked Stefan Kudoke extra nicely, he might even be able to do a special custom something for you. If I had my way, I'd have a little command module headed towards the moon. And Snoopy. Definitely Snoopy. If there's a watch brand that can be relied upon to make you do a double take, it's the chaps and chapettes at H. Moser & Company, and this year's colorific collection is no exception. With a palette of shades straight from the guy who turns everything to Skittles, Moser is pushing back on the industry doom and gloom by spraying it like a 10-hour marathon round of Splatoon. First up is an Endeavour Centre Seconds concept with that enamelled hammered texture, but this time in a quality street purple, which perfectly matches the purple seconds hand, indicating the caliber HMC 201 Straumann double hairspring. Then there's a rose gold tourbillon edition with a teal blue coloration of the same dial, which looks like it should have a hut on wooden stilts poking up out of it. Two new flyback streamliners in enamel have also appeared in blue and green, although instead of a hammered texture, it's what Moser is calling frosted instead. John Mayer would approve. But the real eye candy of this year's haul is the Pop collection, which brings pastel-toned stones together for a selection of shades taken straight from the colourblindness eye test. Pale pinks paired with jade greens, limes alongside deep azure, turquoise skies ringed with burnt orange coral. Maybe you like them, maybe you don't, but you definitely won't miss them. Alongside the more formal Zurich World Time from Nomos comes a new Club Sport Neomatic World Timer in both silver and blue, updated to keep active types aware of where they are in the world. A not too dissimilar display to the Zurich World Time is updated via the new caliber DUW3202, an automatic movement with balance bridge for extra stability when outside doing active things. Water resistance is up to 100 meters as well for the 40mm case, which is impressive because of the World Time pusher at 2 o'clock and a thickness of just a centimeter. Give the pusher a squeeze and the main time display will move to wherever you are locally, with the 24-hour subdial at 3 keeping track of what's going on at home. The big news this year is that Rolex is out and Tag Heuer is back, although fans of the Formula 1 will probably be a little confused by the minimal appearance of Tag Heuer trackside, its place taken by the high-speed word art used to promote Louis Vuitton instead. The recent collaboration with luxury fashion brand Kith to revive the Tag Heuer Formula 1 was just too lucrative an opportunity to keep to a limited edition. And eagle-eyed racing fans will have noticed that it wasn't the Carrera or Monaco gracing the F1 timing boards, but the plastic fantastic Formula 1 instead. So yes, that's back too, in a suite of 9 colours, ready to get a new generation excited about day sleeping on a Sunday. Cases are up to 38mm in a mix of plain steel, DLC coated and colourful biopolyamide, yet another bright material that's definitely, most certainly not plastic. Which combo you choose will be entirely down to your aversion to taste. The Solar Quartz caliber TH50 is keeping things ticking, as is a water resistance of 100 meters, and there's a choice of bracelets and straps depending on the chosen model. Whichever you go for, prices start at 1,750 Swiss francs, making this particular Formula 1 something of an unsafe release. If you're anything like me, then you're also sick to the back teeth of your watch not being able to turn into a robot. I've been saying it for years, but it just feels like no one's hearing me. That is, until now. Hortlants, manufacturers of all things unexpected when it comes to telling the time, have finally answered the call to build a watch that also turns into a robot. This is the Retrovision 85, following on from the Bakelite radio-inspired Retrovision 47, and it's what Max Buser would be if he were cast as an anthropomorphic ornament in Disney's 80s themed live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast. In watch form, the jump hour arrangement is barely any different to your average watch, and will at no point be at any risk of having aircraft trying to land on it whatsoever. The slightly thicker than usual bezel very cleverly unfolds to become the limbs of our android wrist buddy, revealing his little golden noggin. There will be no arrhythmia to be found in his mechanical heart, however, a tourbillon that beats with extra precision thanks to a double hairspring. Now all we need to do is hope that he's one of the good ones, and not one of the kill-all-humans ones. The problem with watches is that it's only really possible to wear so many at once, and unless you're going to commit to the level of Chrono, chances are your max capacity at any one time is a dizzying 1. So that means you have to choose between performance, technology, or horology. The peeps at Ulysse Nardin thought that was some fresh bull right there and decided to do something about it. This is the Ulysse Nardin Diver Air, and it's a watch that's decided to be all 3 at once. A generous helping of carbon fibre and titanium, plus a caliber that's not only manufactured from titanium as well, but has been whittled down to but a toothpick's worth, brings weight down to a scant 52 grams, or 46 without the lightweight canvas strap. That's not the lightest watch in the world, but that's because it's got another trick up its sleeve. It's also water resistant to 200 meters, using a titanium safety cell to seal the caliber from the porous carbon fiber. By comparison, that titanium Omega worn by what's-his-face the pole vaulter during the Summer Olympics was both heavier and less water resistant. The Diver Air is also bringing it high horology style, bumping up power reserve to 90 hours despite there being less movement than your average Call of Duty camper. And despite being heavily reduced from the Diver X skeleton upon which it's based to meet that target weight, it's also actually stronger, with the bridges redesigned for improved torsional stiffness. So if you're looking for the one watch to rule them all, the Diver Air is certain to be Sauron's choice. When you like, subscribe and comment on my videos, it really does help, so thank you for taking a moment to click all the things and do all the typings. It's very much appreciated. It wouldn't be Watches and Wonders without Zenith copying something, and lo and behold, the addition of blue ceramic to the entire lineup is exactly the kind of thing we were expecting. It'll take more than that to get Ed Sheeran repping your brand, who was actually recently seen wearing the black ceramic Ingenieur instead. Keep up, Zenith. What wasn't expected at all is the Zenith GFJ, a homage to founder Georges Favre-Jacot that revives the observatory-grade caliber 135 for this new high-end timepiece, aiming to climb Zenith up several rungs on the horological ladder. A 39mm platinum case houses a blue lapis lazuli dial, surrounded by a brick-like guilloche pattern inspired by the bricks with which the Zenith manufacture is built, plus a blue-tinted mother-of-pearl sub-seconds to complete the picture. The long, straight hands have been lifted straight from the painted lines dividing the spaces in the manufacture staff car park. The brick pattern is duplicated onto the movement, and the buckle as well, if you're asking, which gets a free-sprung balance with Breguet overcoil that beats at a vintage 18,000 VPH, but runs for a contemporary 72 hours. It's chronometer certified and regulated to ±2 seconds per day, and gets a lick of hand finishing to complete the picture. A limited edition of 160 pieces keeps it exclusive, although perhaps not as much so as the $50,000 price tag. Vacheron Constantin is making a bit of a habit of knocking out the world's most complicated watches every year, and the Le Cabinotier Solaria Ultra Grand Complication is no exception, upping the stakes from last year's Barclay Grand Complication, the most complicated pocket watch ever made, and inevitably to be followed up by the Ultra Mega Super Grand Complication to infinity and back again in 2026. For right now, the Solaria Ultra Grand Complication is where it's at if you want your wrist more complex than Christopher Nolan's Sudoku. With a miserly 41 complications made up of just 1,521 parts that required a paltry 13 patents to master, the Solaria manages to be reasonably well sized at 45mm across by 14.99mm thick. A Tudor Black Bay Pro wouldn't look too diminutive alongside it. And the Tudor Black Bay Pro doesn't have a deep breath. Day and night indicator for local time, a 24-hour display for home time also with day and night indication, world time indication for 24 cities, a tourbillon with silicon balance spring, civil time display, perpetual calendar including days of the week, date, months, years, leap years and day and week numbers to ISO 8601, plus moon phase and age, tide level indicator and spring and neap tides indications, as well as seasons, equinoxes, solstices and zodiac signs, not to mention sun position, sunrise, sunset, day duration, equation of time, sun culmination time, sun horizon height, sun declination, sidereal hours and minutes, sky chart and temporal tracking of celestial objects, and how could I forget the minute repeater, Westminster carry-on chime with 4 hammers and gongs, and hour only or full chime switch, and even a split-second chronograph, and last but not least, a power reserve indicator for the 72 hours of power. Let's see the Tudor Black Bay Pro do that. If you like your time reading obfuscated, then Cartier has the revival for you, the Jump Hour Tank à Guichet, originally introduced to the brand in 1928. It was post-World War I, and watch hands were in short supply since they'd been repurposed as bayonets for the 23rd Mice Battalion. So Louis Cartier took a different approach, inspired by a Viewmaster toy he'd got for Christmas that had pictures of watches with Jump Hour complications in it. Guichet means grate or slot, and is a term given to box office ticket booths and the little window in the front door of Jabba the Hutt's palace. And you can see that clearly in the Cartier Tank à Guichet, what is essentially a blast door with a couple of peepholes through which to barely read the time. The kookiest variation is also a limited edition in platinum, with the display skew width as an extra challenge for those who found reading the standard one way too easy. If you thought predicting Patek Philippe's next move was getting a bit too easy, then yes, you won't be surprised to see some 40mm models of the Cubitus being added to the collection, although you probably didn't guess that neither of them would be in steel. What was definitely way off the mark for Watches and Wonders bingo was a desk clock, although thankfully this one isn't in collaboration with Hodinkee. Filled to the brim with 912 components, the caliber 86135 PEND-SIRMQSE has a 31-day power reserve, is rated to an accuracy of just plus or minus 1 second per day thanks to a constant force mechanism, and displays a perpetual calendar complete with week number, jumping second, and a push-button setting mechanism. Yours for just £1,000,000. At the complete opposite end of the scale is a hand-wound Calatrava in platinum with a salmon dial and gloss black hands and markers that's just unbelievably pretty to look at. It's exactly what I think of when I picture a Patek, and therefore I'm sure it'll be incredibly unpopular. Drawing a bit more interest perhaps will be the 6159G, a retrograde perpetual calendar with a smoky sapphire dial that lets you see the watch's guts like some kind of cave-dwelling goopfish. If you don't want to stump up the £55,000 required for one of the brand's annual calendars, however, Patek Philippe now offers a day-date calendar complication for only £5,000 more. Yes, I said more. If you're confused, then maybe you're better suited to a Tudor. As well as an instant date hand and day wheel, the 5328G also gets an 8-day power reserve. See, it says right there on the dial, 8 days, which of course lasts for 9 days. Tudor's down the other end of them all. If you're really in the mood to spend some dues, then a rose gold split-second chronograph at £247,000 might do the trick, but what? That's not enough. Then how about the platinum 5308G then? A perpetual calendar chronograph minute repeater for £1,000,000 with an upside-down moon phase that makes it look like a panda. You're not going to unsee that now. No refunds. And now, in true Watches and Wonders tradition, comes the time where we smirk and sneer at Rolex's lazy attempt to generate hype by releasing a slightly different colour for an existing watch and... wait, what? Hold the phone! Rolex actually did something interesting. Several something interestings, actually. The first almost completely passed me by, a white gold edition of the black and green bezeled left-handed GMT-Master 2, now with a green dial. But won't you just check it out? It's Rolex's first go at using a slice of ceramic to hold up the hands and markers. Yes, that green dial is created from the same Cerachrom used for the bezel insert, so it matches perfectly. For the full Everose Gold GMT-Master 2, there's a new stone dial, which in itself seems pretty unremarkable considering how ubiquitous timepiece pebbles have become, but here it's something different, something I've never even heard of before. Tiger's Iron. That's not what Mr. Woods calls his mini Mr. Woods, it's a metamorphic milfway of tiger's eye, red jasper and silvery hematite, that looks like a lava stream fresh on its way to find out what the residents of Pompeii are up to. Okay, granted, there are a few new low-energy bits and bobs popping up in the 2025 lineup, like some pastel colours for the Oyster Perpetual collection, a gold bracelet for the 1908, and a turquoise lacquer dial for the gold Oysterflex Daytona that Rolex is definitely not calling flamingo blue. But wait a second, wait until you hear about the Land-Dweller. I'll be the first to admit that the Land-Dweller sounds like a knockoff Chinese off-roader, and the hexagonal grille pattern on the dial is doing nothing to assuage that feeling. But actually the Land-Dweller is doing 3 very interesting things that are worth taking a few minutes to be nerdy about. The first and most apparent thing is the new escapement, all in silicon, that's an evolution of the dual impulse natural escapement first concocted by Abraham Louis Breguet, by splitting the input energy between 2 escape wheels. The new escapement, which Rolex has named Dynapulse, because of course it has to make it sound like a Kegel exercise tool for old ladies, reduces friction by transmitting energy through rolling rather than sliding. Rolex, of course, doesn't call it a dual impulse natural escapement because those are words that have been first uttered outside the crown's hallowed halls, so instead it's been leafing through its thesaurus to come up with sequential distribution escapement instead. The sequential distribution escapement is also fitted with a siloxy balance spring, a first for a non-ladies Rolex watch, and for added efficiency, a laser turn ceramic balance staff that Rolex has resisted making into a Saturn V rocket. This means it can run at a high beat 5 Hz or 36,000 VPH for 66 hours, which I'm pretty sure is a first for Rolex. The second thing worth noting about this launch is that it's effectively a reproduction of the Oyster quartz case from the 1970s. That may seem strange since this isn't a quartz watch, but actually it makes perfect sense. After trialling the Beta 21 quartz movement in the Texan, Rolex went on to develop its own quartz mechanism, which was very different and mechanically quite impressive. The Oyster quartz back then represented a technological step forward for Rolex, and reprising it for the consecutive dispensation escapement feels like a solid second chapter. The third very interesting thing about the Land-Dweller is the inclusion of the transparent caseback. Of course, it makes sense for Rolex to be showing off the shiny new goods, but precedent so far would dictate that only its most precious of precious metal watches would get one, and so it was anticipated that the Land-Dweller would only be available in gold and platinum. It is made in both those metals and in steel as well, in 36 or 40mm. That feels unexpectedly generous for Rolex, although prices do start at £12,250, so maybe not. So there you have it, another year, another watches. Stay tuned next time for Also Watches. The watches never stop. See you next time.